awkward
that's
to
natural.
me.
If you don't like it, we'll stop it again.
Where do I need to look at the beginning? Look at this. This.
Yep,
Okay.
that'll probably-
Okay. So I have to look there. So,
yeah.
which is weird because you're not like talking to anybody. If you stood over there, maybe I could talk to you.
I don't want you looking at me. I want you to look at that teleprompter.
Okay.
The camera.
That's cool. Well, you look good. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And if there's other things that you think of that you would like to, I want this show, well, I don't know what Mel wants the show to be, but I want it to be,
Interviews or no?
no.
Rather not have one.
No, but the 27 minutes went off the thing, so. I just want it to be like positive, but informative for our community. There's a lot of issues that when Mel asked to do it, I'm like, well, okay. But I really didn't think that a lot of people would want to come on a show. And everyone I've asked has been like, oh yeah, I'll do that. And then sometimes they're like, oh yeah, I would like to talk about.
Yeah.
And then they've got other ideas. So I think that there's a need for a program like this. And Mel knew there was a need, but I don't really like being on TV. It's not my favorite thing. So I haven't watched one of the programs yet. But I will, because I like to evaluate what I'm doing. I just haven't had the nerve.
All right. Let's get close.
And when I'm nervous, I talk faster, so.
So do I. That's a natural thing.
Yeah.
I just have to remind myself just to
Yeah.
slow down.
Take it easy. Okay. And then we don't have to worry, after I say the intro, we don't have to really worry about, they'll have the cameras on us wherever they
Okay.
feel. You don't have to worry about looking any certain way. They totally do all that.
Okay.
And then afterwards, Stephanie, she's the, what is it she is called, the producer or the producer, she'll make us look good. So not that she really edits what we say, but she makes it all come together.
Right.
And she was a student at Sholo last year.
Good.
And because of this program, Mel hired her.
We're ready when you are.
Okay, that was the key. Welcome to the School Zone, the show about your local school districts. And today I have Mr. Mike Wright from the Blue Ridge School District, and I'm grateful that you're here. I didn't mean to just try and spit out Blue Ridge. I am, okay, thank you so much. Okay, I will do better, I promise. I'm going to read it off the thing.
You can do it 3 more times if you want.
Oh, well, I won't.
We'll
I
take the
will.
best one.
Okay, well, I'll just.
Oh, wait. Now we've got a problem. So.
Oh. Sorry, Stephanie. I need to just read it off the thing until I get more comfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, they were just resetting the clock. So. Okay, now we're ready when you are.
Okay. Welcome to School Zone, the show all about your local school districts here in the White Mountains. I'm your host, Amy Tregaskes from Sholo. I'm an educator, but mostly a mom, and I have with me today the Blue Ridge Superintendent, Mike Wright. Thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And welcome to our viewers, sorry. Thank you so much. I have you here today because I know that you guys, Blue Ridge, is trying to do a bond in this upcoming election in November. So what is the bond for?
The bond is for capital expenses. Our budget's divided up to, simply put, into maintenance and operation. That's one separate bucket.
What is in that bucket?
Maintenance and operation, that takes care of all of your salaries, all the benefits, which it makes up the largest portion of your budget, utilities, all those costs associated with generally operating a school.
Okay.
The capital side, for buses, books, equipment, buildings, maintenance of those buildings and facilities, and that's the capital side. So that's the reason we are asking for a bond, is to make up a significant shortfall within our capital.
So it's for maintenance issues, but it's not in the maintenance and operations budget, right?
Right. They're very, M&O is a separate group. Capital has a very more narrow definition and use. in what you could direct those dollars towards.
Okay, I just asked that because a lot of people say, well, they're maintaining their buses or maintaining their facility, and it sounds like maintaining should be in maintenance. So thank you for that. What are you going to be using this specifically for?
There are a number of areas that have suffered within the district as a result of deferred maintenance for the past 8 years. We're probably 4 to 6 years behind in technology, so we're going to have a $3.4 million investment in technology. And part of that investment is to sustain the technology. You could put a couple of $1 million within that effort, and then in 5 or 7 years you have to be prepared to refresh it, because you know that the computers are dated and you have to recycle those out. So $3.4 million in the technology side, and also within that effort are a number of safety initiatives. Doors, the most safe environment you can provide the kids or adults and the staff in to protect them from bad acts and bad guys is to have a door that locks from the inside. And so very few of our older buildings have doors that actually lock from the inside. The exterior hardware is also very dated. The keys, trying to control the keys after 35 years of handing those out to different people, it's hard to do that as well. And so there's also a need for different types of surveillance just on the property to make sure that the kids are safe. And so that's all on the technology side. We have a need to update our fleet. We recently leased a couple of new buses, and we have probably another 3 or 4 relatively new buses on lease. And the balance of those buses are anywhere between 25 years old and 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so they're inefficient from a fuel perspective. They're also inefficient from the perspective that they break down pretty regularly.
Especially when you live up here in the White Mountains and you always have to travel. Like, you're always traveling long distances to games even. Like, you hate to get, or a field trip, you hate to get stuck halfway in the canyon.
That's true. And they're coming up the hill. Yeah, the trip from Phoenix, I can tell you, it's about 3 hours in a regular vehicle, and on the way back is about the same in a bus that might take you 5 or 6 hours because of coming back up that hill or going down the hills.
Yeah.
And so the buses and transportation, about $2.2 million in that area. And then we've identified there's probably well over $25 million need on the renovation and construction side, but we've pared it down to the most important areas, and that's about $9.4 million to bring our facilities up to speed, just to create an appropriate learning space for the kids.
So if I hear you right, you are taking some of the money that you're asking for and you're putting it into updating your technology.
Correct.
And a portion of the money is going into safety, like doors, making sure they lock, and keys, and that kind of thing. And then the other big part is busing. Like,
the remodeling, construction projects.
I missed that. Okay.
The transportation is about $2.2 million. The remodeling and updates and creating an appropriate learning environment is about $9.4 million.
When you say remodeling, what are you thinking?
Well, we have some of these buildings that are 35, 40, 50 years old. And so we have to go in there, for instance, we're in a position the last couple of years, we've actually increased our enrollment about 275 students. We're looking at part of this effort would be consolidation of our facilities. The Porter Mountain campus, which is our newest and most efficient building, is only being used to the extent of about 65%. Consolidating a K through 5 construct would mean that facility would be used to the extent of about 85%.
Okay.
And so we're using more of that. But in order to do that as well, you have to retrofit playgrounds and fix parking lots and do some other things. And then we had committed the school board had committed to the community, if we did in fact grow and enrollment came back, they would mothball the old middle school and revitalize it before they built a new structure. So true to that promise, that's what we're going to do, is put in probably about $1 million into the old building and bring it up to par to create an appropriate learning space for a 6 through 8 middle school construct. Okay.
So when you say we, who determined that these were the priority needs for your school?
We did this a number of ways. Some are self-evident. You can look at the high school, drive by and say, wow, that thing needs to be painted. You don't have to be a contractor or an architect to see that. But the other needs in terms of how did we decide most pressing, we formed committees. We formed also a superintendent's committee to consider, do we even want to look at having a bond? is that something that the community believes is a good idea? And so we invited over 45, 50 people throughout the community and another 20 or so people that were employees and a few students as well to consider the bond question. Is there a need? And so we provided the data. We met on about 4 separate occasions, and in the end the committee decided unanimously we did need a bond.
And this is what we needed
This
it
is what
for.
we need it for. And so we had the various directors come in transportation and make their pitches that were, this is what an appropriate fleet would look like, and these are the needs in the buses. This is what the investment would require. Same thing with the facilities, technology, and then the committee was able to evaluate that. And so then eventually I took that recommendation to the board and asked the board and made a superintendent's recommendation that we would support these projects, which total about $15 million.
Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. I pulled some of the questions off of the bond pamphlet, information pamphlet.
Okay.
And some of them were provided by Norris Dodd and Rebecca Binda Dodd. And I thought they were great questions. I wanted to ask you some of them so that we let our audience know and get the same information, but straight from the source. And I know
Sure.
that there's some things that you might have to say, oh, I can't talk about that because schools are bound to only talk about certain things. They can't be persuasive. So if that happens, you just say, whoa, I can't talk about that.
Certainly.
The first question, but these questions were really good, and if you get a chance to read through that information, the for and against, there were no againsts. I thought that was interesting. They're all positive and for this bond override, or not an override, it's just a bond.
It's a bond election.
Bond election. The first one is, what happened to the Prop 123 money?
Right. I think it's important to note, Proposition 123 was not increment of money. That was those were not new dollars. Those were dollars that had been owed to the schools. The state had been holding for years, and we as a group eventually agreed to a settlement of about 72% of what was owed. So those were back payments that were paid.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly all of that went to salaries to teachers and into the classroom.
Now,
And
it
so-
didn't, the state didn't decide how you had to spend it. You guys chose to
Right.
spend it that way, didn't you?
We did, but we were, the intention of that was to put more money in the teacher's pocket. Now, some legislators have said, well, you could have used that for capital. True, but then they had also said, well, see, you're pulling money out of the classroom.
Right.
So they're a bucket of absolute dollars, and it's like a bubble that you push. It has an impact on whatever you do. So, I mean, it helped a little bit, and it was nice to be able to support teachers at a greater level for the next several years.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly doesn't do, I mean, it's 20% of what's needed, maybe
Right.
at most, 20% of what we needed.
Yeah, so while you're grateful for it,
Right.
you put it in with the teachers, that's what you did. And so you still have a need, a desperate need for this capital.
That's true. Teaching and
Okay.
also instructions, we invested about $100,000 into textbooks as well.
Oh, good.
And so into the classroom is where a majority of that money landed.
Either with teachers or in just
instructional
somehow
materials.
of instruction. Okay.
Right.
That's fantastic. Okay. Well, Blue Ridge announced a $13.7 million budget in July. Why doesn't the budget cover these costs?
Your budget is broken up into 2 different buckets, and so of that 13.7 million, about 13,600,000 and some change is your maintenance and operation. Very little of that is capital. We might have $150,000 in capital. Now, I believe we actually transferred some money from maintenance and operation into capital, so we funded maybe $250,000 total, but that took, again, money out of the classroom to do
Right.
that. And so our budget, our current capital budget, is not even sufficient to pay our bus leases. So you're always having to take money out of maintenance and operation to just fund your general operations. And so if you look at it, why has that occurred? Well, why are we asking for a bond? In 2008, we received $1.8 million in capital funding, compared to $150,000 roughly this year. If you compound that, $1.8 million over a 8-year period is roughly $14 million. That's what has
Just for
happened.
capital.
And that's where
Yeah.
it's been cut. We've been cut back. All over the state this is happening. You'll notice Glendale had to temporarily close a couple of schools. Safford, in a community where I think your father was a superintendent, they've had to close a building and the kids are dressing in like the transportation area or something for locker rooms because the roofs are in danger of collapsing. So there's a tsunami of repairs that are going to be needed throughout the state. We're not alone. Rural areas have typically been neglected. We've been fortunate at Blue Ridge to have the support of our community that they are willing to invest at a disproportionate rate into their schools. But not all communities enjoy that same luxury.
Right, well, you're the only one in the area that I know
In this
of.
area, we're the only one that can pass anything. It's true.
Yeah. Well, just bond aside, why is it a good idea to invest in public education?
You know, I look at it from the standpoint of all the social challenges that we have. I mean, we're willing to pay $40,000 a year to incarcerate a person, and some very high percentage of those folks that are incarcerated, I've heard figures from 90 to 95%, are illiterate. They do not have a proper education. They're very limited in what they can do. $40,000 per person, per prisoner. The state is funding us roughly at $3,600 per kid, $3,654 or something. That's our state allotment.
Wow.
They've been cutting taxes for 25 years. And so we're now not, we're cutting into the marrow. Forget about bones, we're cutting into the marrow. And so that is why we're losing good teachers. That's why we are not able to provide adequate textbooks and supplies for our teachers and do all those things that have been done to create appropriate learning environments. And so schools are the heart of any community, especially in a rural area. Mm-hmm. Good schools, you have good property values. Good schools attract people to come to the businesses like our hospitals and the doctors. Right. And the professional people want to know, what are the quality of your schools? What are the safety of your schools like? And so when you look at, from an investment, we know as an individual, there's really no better investment you can make than investing in your own education. It's even more true with their children. Paying out, helping them and investing in the K through 3, we know early childhood helps kids become positioned to be successful later on. And so it's a fundamental responsibility. It's uniquely American. I think it's very un-American what we're doing in terms of divesting the public education, and it's being diverted into charter schools and other mechanisms, not
Right.
public schools, not public school districts. And that has had a pejorative effect on education. There's an absolute bucket of money that's there. And if you spread it in 15 different ways,
it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at it. But I don't think there's anything more important that we can do than invest the lives of our children, the health, safety, and welfare of our children. It sounds cliche, and maybe it is, but they are our future.
Well, in just a few years, they're going to be running things.
They are.
Like, we want well-educated, productive citizens. So, okay, I'm going to switch back to bond. Let's see, will my taxes go up?
The average in the Pinetop Lakeside School District in that area, at an assessed valuation, average home, an assessed valuation is different than your property value. Typically considerably lower than what the market value would be. Mm-hmm. But let's just say at $100,000, over the course of a year, they'll go up about $47 a year, $4 a month. So yes, they will go up. If you're a business, it's about twice that on a $100,000 valuation.
Okay. Well, this is probably an unexpected question, but how far does the Blue Ridge School District cover? How far into Sholo does it come?
I'm only been here a couple of years. I can't tell you exactly where it goes, but I think our boundaries are about to encompass Walmart and then east over through towards Hondo. Okay. Before you get to the
Do you cover part of Vernon, or does Vernon just go wherever?
I'm not sure how far east we go, actually.
I just wondered that. I'll get back to you.
That's a good question.
I'll find out.
I'm not certain.
That's okay. What happens if this bond doesn't pass?
Well, then we'll continue to take money out of the classroom to repair old buses that are fuel efficient, that will break down. At some point, we'll probably have to cut back on our activities and field trips and some of those things because we won't have the capacity to transport the kids. Our buildings will continue to deteriorate. We'll not have the basic funding that we need to make sure we could have a safe and appropriate learning environment. So things don't get better. Deferred maintenance is just the gift that keeps on giving because it doesn't go away. It's almost like the big loans that you get for college or whatever. If you just ignore it, just grows and grows. And so having, out of necessity, put off these projects for 8 years. Our school hasn't been painted for about 15 years, the high school.
Oh, wow.
And that's because the funds weren't there. So
Well, what happens if you don't paint a school?
it starts to deteriorate. The building does. It absorbs water. You can get mold.
Yeah.
They start to literally start to fall apart if they're not maintained. The exterior envelope has to be protected from the elements. And we have severe elements up here. It gets warm and gets really cold. We have ice. We have snow. So
I know, and it wears fast. I just personally, I know that when things are clean and in order in my home, then everything just feels better. It runs better. And I see that in communities too. When I know that the city of Show Low makes a great effort to, if there's ever any graffiti, they try and hurry and get that taken care of right away, because we want that. We don't want that element in the community. We want to be able to be clean, to expect respect. And I think that when buildings are painted and in good shape, not disarray, that students feel proud and have respect for their education. So I'm excited that you guys are choosing to go for a bond, and I really hope that it passes.
thank you.
I had one other question from this bond pamphlet that I thought was a pretty good question, and I don't think it's related to the bond. It says, when will the legislature provide more state general fund support for public education?
With the current construct, the current folks in place, it won't happen. It'll have to be when enough people see what's happening to the schools and really understand the depth of what's happening and the breadth and width of this whole thing, and other people have to get in there and have a different perspective. Because
so what do we do? Do we go vote?
If you're looking for people,
or do we lobby?
Both.
Both.
But when you're voting for people and they say, we support education, if you're supportive of public school districts, you need to make sure that they're supportive of a public school district and not a private school or a charter school and saying, well, we're going to put more money into schools. The governor said, we know how to do it. The basis school, if you just did some research, their average income per student is very high. Their parents are largely professionals. Now, there are some exceptions, but that doesn't represent the diversity of our population,
Well,
or some
especially
of the
not our
needs.
rural schools.
Or in the high need areas that we have. I mean, the greatest indicator is really the socioeconomics of the parents and the experiences that children have. They bring those to them with school. We both, in the district of Show Low and Pine Top and the surrounding areas, we have a good percentage of our kids that come to school hungry. And if it were not for schools and the lunch program, they wouldn't get food. And so in order for this to get better, we need to invest in education. Right now, what is happening is the responsibility is being shifted to the local communities. And so we've been cutting taxes for 25 years. You can't keep cutting and invest simultaneously.
Right. Well, Mr. Wright, thank you so much for coming and being on the show today. I hope that our viewers have learned a lot, and I hope that you'll tune in for next month for our school zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Is that okay? Okay, she gave me the thumbs up.
Double thumbs up.
Hey, I really do appreciate it.